All right. I was thinking, how about I show you that little thingy, which I think I didn't really properly show you last time.
Yeah, that was my hope.
Okay, so I will share my screen. Mm, entire screen. Oh. So, can you see this repository?
Yes.
Okay, so basically, these are the apps, and nothing much new here. So I created these Hello World apps. I put them in a special folder, so nothing changed there. The only thing, what I basically did is that these manifests with extra metadata, they are now used by another app. So it's basically apps, scanning apps. I created this launcher app, and what that basically does is put this menu on the right. So I don't know why it's not showing the background. Maybe because I'm recording. But basically, this launcher here is basically just scanning the apps. I think I'm not 100% sure. I'm pulling up the. Yeah, I think they live here. Oh, sorry, it's a proxy. But the apps basically live in this aframe.app object, and it's basically just looping over it and scanning the metadata, the manifest, if there's an icon, and then if there is, it will just draw the icon here, and if you click it, then it will basically send an event to that app launch, and then the app can basically do something like display itself. So the init in this case is I think actually empty. If we look at this hello world one, this is a window, I think. So here you can see that the init is empty. This is not necessary, but it just happens to be. And there is this launcher event, which is basically triggered if you click the icon. So, and why was this needed? Well, it was indirectly needed because I became so frustrated with, debugging the browser on my Oculus headset. It's some kind of tap dance where I have to plug in a USB to connect with ADB, and then I can enable Wi-Fi debugging, and then I can unplug it, and like this whole dance. I was thinking, like, why not like this? So here's basically a portable sort of inspector with the console, and like if I do console log hello, then you can see it here as well. And this is really a godsend because now I can just put on the headset, and if something doesn't work, I can immediately launch this console to see what the error is, instead of this whole tap dance with USB cables, etc.
So, when you say when you put the headset on, is it in immersive mode, or is it in, let's say, 2D?
For now, this is 2D. This is it's called vConsole. This is an open source project which on one hand, it's emotionally it hurted that it wasn't immersive, but I think something like this could be replaced with. So I'm also working on the terminal now, which is not implemented yet, but I can imagine that we can just forward the console output to such a window as well, and then it works in immersive. So I think this thingy is just a temporary thing for now, but eventually we can delete this to get it in immersive mode. And this one, this is I refactored everything a bit, that everything is an app. So even that it's called spatialize. There's more metadata than code, but this basically is now responsible for this flipping of immersive and 2D. And all these things are now they can be triggered. So it's a bit of a bring your own apps shell or XR shell. There was one more thing which I cannot really show you right now, but I was experimenting with the HTML mesh in with an XR layer mode, and in one way I got it to work. Yes, great. But then I realized I had a big problem, because if you're using an XR layer, then suddenly all these raycasters and depth testing doesn't work anymore. So suddenly you see a terminal sort of it's sort of like being drawn over your hand, which is actually your hand is in front of the terminal. So it's like super weird. And I was thinking like, okay, so this XR layer is great, but maybe only in a way that maybe the whole world fades to black and then you only see that layer or something. So that was a bit of a disappointment. I don't know if you have experience with that, but turns out it's not that useful.
Yeah, so two points. Well, I'll start with this one. Indeed, the layers, they were very much raw. Like here is the content you want, and everything else disappears or gets behind it. And I think initially, the first time I tried it, I thought, oh yeah, magical solution to get high resolution 2D content.
Right.
And indeed, very quickly, because in my opinion, a lot of the beauty in XR is not just the display, rather it's at least as much the display as the interactions. And usually interactions need some kind of visual feedback. And it's really hard to get visual feedback if something is like or stealing the view, basically. So I think initially I was excited, then a little bit taken aback, and now I'm like, well, in some specific situation, for example, if you want to read a document and basically there were no interaction and the document is really the center of, and the resolution, everything is like makes such a big difference, then might be useful. Otherwise, I don't know. Not so. Yeah, I don't think it's a magical solution anymore, basically.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, maybe for a painting or a video, but
yes.
Yeah, other than that.
And again, those things must be something that you don't typically interact with, or that things that you interact with, they're on the sides, which then usually, do I really need XR for that? I don't know. It's arguable. I'd say if, for example, you want to quickly make a video player and you're in a flight, for example, and then the interface can be outside of that content, but yeah, I don't know. Or maybe no visual interface, maybe switching back and forth. The point is, it does need some thinking. You can't just like, hey, layer, boom.
Yeah, exactly. I was hoping to sort of create a sort of wrapper, like, but you're absolutely right. So it was a bit of an emotional roller coaster. Yay, it works, and it's not that useful, but it's good to know, because then I'm not. It's good to know to not use something, when to not use something.
And now to go back on the initial point about the apps. Okay, two suggestions I would make. One is when you go back to the repository, I would, or actually in the examples, but both directory actually is the same. But for you now, it's easy, but for somebody else to understand what an app is, I'm wondering that you have data, maybe you have a key viewer that would say, hey, I'm the app explorer. Those apps are not necessarily installed yet on your XRSH session, let's say. And then you can browse and then pick them and, let's say, install them. But for this, you need some metadata, a kind of preview, same way that when I'm on my Linux distribution, I can use apt-get and install if I know already everything I need. But if I'm more in discovery mode, browsing through with image preview, maybe comment from users, etc., I think it's really it helps a lot for discoverability, basically. A little bit like the A-frame or the C-frame registry of component.
Yeah, that is a good point. If I look at the source here, so here you can put any URL which is flexible. But if you don't know the URL, then so this is actually maybe a place. I don't know exactly. Like where would we? I can imagine a JSON file which. Or like these registries, like where would we do we even want to focus on registries yet, or should we just put a JSON file in the root of the repository, which is an array with all the possible URLs? Maybe that's easier.
Okay, so for us, it doesn't really matter. But if we imagine like a third user who might or might not be a developer, I think any kind of visual preview helps because otherwise it's only apps for somebody who's already convinced, let's say. Otherwise, one can even imagine like composing an XRSH session before even entering XR. A kind of onboarding moment where you say, oh, I want this app, that app, that app. I think that would be pretty cool. And yet, if a single JSON is sufficient to have such a thing ready, I think it might be worthwhile. It should be the priority? No, of course. It has to work first of all, and then be useful, and then discoverability. There. But only it's not urgent, but I think it would be helpful.
That's a good point. Let me immediately create an issue about this.
Yeah.
But you can continue if you want.
No, it's okay. I'll wait a bit. This way I'll try to formulate properly my thoughts.
Is JSON file in the root of repo plus button. And an explorer or plus is explorer app, which shows all apps, including perhaps screenshots or something visual, and bit of manifest description. All right.
And then the other thing I think that would be when you started presenting the different apps, my initial thought was, what's an app? And then my second thought was, what is not an app? And if the answer is anything can be an app, well, okay, that's convenient. It sounds powerful and all, but it makes it a little bit tricky to interact with. And I think maybe one thing that can help to distinguish or understand is precisely like things that are for the user and the one that may be for the system, let's say. Because everything is an app makes it, I think intellectually a bit tricky to understand. So I'm wondering if they should be. Of course, there can be a way to distinguish both. I don't know what should be based on. Like, is an app managing other app has a special status? Is it based on privilege? Because maybe not all app can inspect other app because of some security or privacy issues. Maybe everything is at the same level. Let's say there are all apps that can manage everything else and thus break everything else. I'm not sure, but for example, I, as a user from my system, I distinguish, for example, the kernel from Blender, or managing shortcuts of KDE from KiCad or whatever. So I'm wondering if that could be useful for users or even for us to distinguish special apps from normal apps, or maybe it's not needed. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you make a good point. I think the word app. So I think what we basically deal with here is a super component which allow you to basically use other components hassle-free. Like if you just look here, so it allows you to. It's a component which allows you to immediately require other components, so it's very easy to set up. And an app is, so this is sort of like the sky is the limit. Everything is possible. You can listen to all the events of a component, so you can even intercept events which were basically for other components. So it's a bit of a super component, and the word app implies maybe other things or restrictions or something sandboxy, and so there is a bit of a confusion there maybe. That's a good point. I don't really have a good answer to that. I usually, my rule of thumb is usually security is very important. But when you make stuff, I think worrying about, let's say, permissions and stuff when there is like.
Right. No, but sorry. What I don't. My point was not to say that some apps should have less privilege. Maybe not. But rather, if everything is an app, it's excited, let's say, for a developer viewpoint, but also from a user, it's overwhelming. Like, what does that actually mean? So, because does an app, okay, let me ask a question. Does an app need window borders, for example, like with its name and a cross?
Well, the simple answer is no, because the Hello World example is just basically a primitive, showing a primitive.
Yeah, I understand it, and I think it's powerful. So that's again what most people, I assume, they go to a desktop, they start their computer. What they assimilate or think is an app is something that is manipulable, which goes thus through borders of a window. But I know that on KDE, for example, I can remove the borders, and thus I don't have any of those options. And I also know that if I start VI on my terminal, it doesn't have any window. The terminal has, let's say, borders and all, but not VI itself. And I know that VI is an app proper. So I'm wondering, in terms of conceptualization, again, from a user standpoint, is it an app? Is it a widget? Is it a system app that manage other, etc.? I think those, let's say, if, and maybe it's too early for this, but if in terms of, that's also why I mentioned discoverability before, for people to get excited as users, saying, oh, it's an app and anything can be an app and it's a powerful model, it doesn't mean shit. Like they are like, okay, but what I as a user can do? So I'm wondering if, and I don't think it's necessarily costly. That's why maybe it's already there in terms of metadata. maybe it's something that needs border, doesn't need border, interact with others, does not, I'm not sure, system. That is probably sufficient, but that might be, yeah, I don't know. I'm just rambling now. It sounds important, even though I can't really say it clearly.
Yeah, you make a good point. Maybe we should separate some categories, because right now it's already done. Like, if it doesn't have an icon, it will not be shown in the launcher. And this is just a simple heuristic, but what it actually is it's making a distinction between, yeah, let's say something for the end user or not. So maybe we can come up with some categories here, like if it, so instead of checking does it have an icon, it could also check a field, let's say
yeah,
categories or something, if it's in the
I don't think it's good to be implicit. I think being explicit about it would be better.
Also make an issue about that.
Yeah. And I think, for example, when some process manager, for example, they hide processes that are not yours, or they hide processes that are system versus not. I think that's useful, and that could be based on this kind of categories. Because, for example, if you do ps minus ax and you see list all the process in your system, it's overwhelming. I mean, you have hundreds of them, especially if you have containers and all. But, for example, being able to distinguish one that is in a container, one that's not, one that's not stored by me as a user. Maybe PS3, where you see which processes it's spawned by another processes. I think, yeah, having this kind of tools to make the processes give affordances basically to processes is quite powerful. Here, when there are a couple of apps, I guess it's not such a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it? I don't know if you can see the screen, but is it an idea to sort of like, when type is app, then it means that there's a window around it to sort of something windowed? Is that a good rule of thumb? And this is good, because if we do this already now, then later, if we do this sort of discoverability, we can sort of filter on these things. Like, maybe some type of apps are completely not interesting for end users.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, good one. Yeah, well, I guess that's sort of it now. Yeah, this ISO terminal, this is what I'm what I actually should be working on as well, to get this VM up and running. And now, since I can debug comfortably, I think I will just focus on the running the Linux shell and ISO in there. And then on the side, I unfortunately I couldn't talk to the NLNet guys, but I have this Word document ready with all the milestones, even though I already sent it to them. But to sort of submit it officially in the format that they wanted, then I should also still finish that. I somehow get sidetracked a lot, because writing this kind of code is much more fun than writing a simple document.
Yeah, I can imagine. I should had something in mind. I forgot. Before NLNet. Oh yeah, it's not this, but maybe that helped me to backtrack my thought. I put in the chat the a console, which is what I use typically to do the debugging from within an immersive experience. Maybe for your V console, that could be a good alternative. I'm sure you've seen it before. I don't know if it fits the bill. I think it's also relatively active. So if something is not good enough, it's possible to suggest or to ask.
Oh, this works in XR?
Yes, it absolutely does.
Then I will just use this. This looks great.
Okay, so if you are not aware of it, I'll do a quick introduction then, because basically it works. The one thing though that I recommend is if you go at the bottom with the different attributes, somehow the author is probably very proud of his introduction. So you'll see it does this, which is cool, but then it's relatively this means the little animation with the ASCII characters to do the A-frame logo. It's cool, but yeah, it takes a couple of seconds, and usually when I use it to debug, I want to go fast because it's not going to work and I need to refresh and restore, etc. So using this and being able to also refresh from within the page, to me, both have been like huge productivity boost for development and testing in XR. And it does, like as you saw, as you were doing with the other one, hijacks the consoles. So basically, if you do the console there, you will see the normal console. So you can still use ADB remote debugging if that's what you prefer. But it just works, and you can change the size. I mean, it's quite customizable, and it works in XR. You can even manipulate it around, move it around. Honestly, it's quite well done, and in terms of performance, it's pretty good. I displayed like a bunch of text in it. I think that's also why he makes the little animation at the beginning. It's the kind of to showcase that no, you don't need like a single line of output. I mean, you can, but in terms of performance, you can try to hit it, and it's still going to hold.
This is great, and I think this is exactly the reason why what we're making right now could be a great sort of extra way to show to people how much components there are, because I'm using A-frame for years. Maybe this is I would be curious. Let's check it out. I think this is probably somewhere in my GitHub stars. Here, it's starred. Do you see that? So I have seen it maybe some years ago, but I completely forgot about it. And, having it at my fingertips or with a plus button and be able to drop it in, that would be so great for the whole WebXR community, I think.
Out of curiosity, making it windowed now, how much work do you think that is?
This one line of code.
Because I think as a demo, I think that's pretty cool and powerful. Because it's using existing component. Like one doesn't have to assume that in order to make it an app, they have to rethink the entire architecture or re-implement everything, etc. So I think that would be pretty cool as a showcase.
Yeah, here it just needs some kind of DOM element. I don't know if this component makes a DOM element somewhere, perhaps.
I don't remember, but I think so, because they try to be as A-frame-ish as possible. So in theory they do. I don't remember, to be honest.
Awesome. Well, I will check that out. That's a good tip. I feel so stupid with my USB plug-in launch Chrome inspector. I don't know if you have ever done that, but it's quite some steps.
I do. In fact, last meeting we had, the Future of Text, a week ago, I was whining that people did not. Everybody was putting up the headset, and I was like, "What are they watching? I want to know what it is." And then I did the same, and then I tried to share my screen or my headset, but it didn't work because of a screen copy version problem. So I had to quickly recompile it, and then I had to do that trick indeed of plugging it, getting the IP, unplug it, reconnect remotely, and then be able to store screen copy. And yeah, it is a pain. And of course, for the anecdote also, every time I don't use it, I get a lot of bugs. And bugs that I can't debug remotely. And as soon as I plug it, then I don't have bugs anymore. So either I take the time, it's not so long, like it's a couple of minutes at most, but every time I do the whole setup, I'm like, okay, and everything works. And when I don't, maybe there is a pattern there. Maybe when I'm getting lazy, then I make more mistakes. I'm not sure, but yeah, I know sadly what it entails. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think I have enough to do. Do you have some other thoughts to share?
Yeah, I'll show you two things. Well, I'll try to share my screens.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think did I mention keycloak last time?
No.
So keycloak is an identity provider. So for example, can you see my screen, by the way?
Mm-hmm. I can see it.
So I'm going to start it. So you, or not. What? Okay. So you get your administration console with your super secret password. And what you have in it are, let's say, users. User Utopia with a login, password, etc. You can use this, or you can also use a database like LDAP, whatever you typically use in order to log into a whole. It's not typically for one user; it's for dozens, if not hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
And then here I made one manually because it's easier for me. But you can then define is a client, which I made for hubs, with the address of the client. So I need to start it. So city. I have a minimalist client there. Oh. Voilà, it's not the right one. Yeah. Voilà, that's even more minimal. And that what I can do is log in. But typically when you log in, you imagine like here, login and password, and you type it. But when you click on it, you go to keycloak. So you basically redirected to the user side of that identity manager server. And then I can log in. I think it's Utopia. And voila, I've logged in. It knows who I am. And I can do whatever I want authenticated. And you can see in the URL, of course, there is no password. It's only like tokens being exchanged, etc. So that's one way to do a clean in the sense that it's industry grade login, security, etc. But you delegate that to a third party. And this is using OpenID. The code, I think I put it on GitHub yesterday. Yeah, there. It's quite small. So it's here, let's say 50 lines of code, more or less. And in none of it, there is anything about the password and all that. Everything is delegated then to the server, which also means that in that server, you can do, I think, authentication, browser, you can have physical key, Docker, etc., double authentication, passwordless, lots of different solutions. So that here you would say instead, the different steps that they are required for it. So I think I find that pretty exciting or positive in the sense that you can have, you don't have to care about all this logic about login and doing it the right way. But if at some point you want that part of your system needs a login, you can do it, I want to say, relatively easily. Again, this is 50 lines of code. I guess in most contexts can be copy-pasted. And thus you can imagine, for example, escalating permissions to say, okay, this user is a super user in the XRSH session. They can do more, whereas if they are not logged in, they don't have access to this kind of information. But again, keycloak has been, this is my shitty code that might not be secure or whatnot, but that part, the whole keycloak flow is secure. So you can be relatively sure that when it says here, welcome, whatever, then the person is who they say they are. They've been through the whole thing. And because it's all web-based, I didn't even try in the headset, but obviously it works in the headset. So, yeah.
Very interesting. So this is, you can actually, instead of building apps with hard-coded authentication in there, you could basically just use keycloak to easily have authentication to all kind of different apps and permissions. The only thing what I'm wondering is, like, they have this beautiful login screen which you can add to apps. Like, would it also be possible to have a register kind of thing?
What do you mean a register in that context?
So let's say we build some kind of let's imagine we were a startup with this XR shell and we want people to sign up, but we don't want to roll our own Node.js authentication. So we install keycloak, and then in the A-frame app we build this login screen which you just showed, but then we also want people to sign up somehow. Would that also be sort of technically possible?
Yeah. It's honestly, keycloak. What is not possible with it? It's just it's a little bit. I don't master the whole thing. I basically use the easiest option. But yes, you can user sign up it. You can sign user up manually, like I did for my test. But you can let them sign up. And also the keycloak login, where I put my true login and password, all that you doesn't have to look as minimalist as the one I did. So one can even, with it could be in XR basically. That could be also the flow itself. You don't need a 2D page. The little problem, actually, that's an interesting exploration. Theoretically, well, if it's in a different domain, you will lose the immersion. But if you put keycloak on the same domain, and I guess a subdomain would work, you might be able to do the login immersive. Do you see what I mean? That despite the redirection, you would remain in XR, not in 2D. Which also means it could be gesture-based. The same way that some people unlock their phone by doing a kind of squiggle across the 9 dots. So one could imagine that you store the authentication mechanism from a normal XR shell page. It redirects you to a keycloak login page that is still immersive. You do a little dance. Let's say you draw an X with your hand or your controller. It says, hey, that is Leon's password. very secure. And then it redirects you to the XRSH page to say, hey, it is indeed truly Leon. And you do all this with no point being in 2D.
Interesting. That would also be very interesting.
I'm relatively confident it's possible. I'm not 100% sure, and I'm not implying it's easy, but I think it's possible.
Well, thanks for bringing this up. I have been looking into the latest state of authentication stuff. Let me share my screen, and there was something like I came across this Authelia. I don't know if that rings a bell.
No.
And I think it's maybe a bit different. It's sort of like a one-way or single sign-on for apps. But as far as I know and I remember, this requires you to sort of set up. You have to sort of like merge it with Nginx. So I wasn't really sure. It felt a bit like, yeah, there is a backend and an application, but at the same time, it's also, you have to fiddle with Nginx configuration. So it was a bit of a, not hassle-free. So what I like about this keycloak is that I guess it's just a Docker, you run it, and then you start from there. I kind of like that idea.
And it takes minutes. Really, you start the container. It's not a big one. Like it doesn't have like, I don't know, machine learning kind of dependencies. The default settings are good, and then again, based on this, like a minimalist example, you can grow to kind of crazy complexity with a double authentication, including specific hardware, customizing the login screen. I might even like for the parliament from time to time, I need to do some training, and I bookmarked a keycloak training. I'm both excited and absolutely not excited because I don't find it, let's say, from a creative standpoint, super thrilling. And then I also get hyped by it because I'm like, oh, if I can use, like I have some, I don't know if I showed you this before, the what's the name, the precursor. I don't know if you can see the webcam.
What is it? A display and a keyboard.
Yes, so it's like an old school phone, let's say.
Yeah.
But it's all open hardware. Well, I'm showing you the back, but it has an FPGA in it, so a processor that you can program yourself. And the entire stack is open source and open hardware. Well, I think so. I think at some point there was some like build tools that are proprietary for the FPGA, but I think it's been solved. My point is, this has also Wi-Fi and a couple of other things. And one could imagine having your XR headset, for example, the Lynx or whatever. And in order to log in, you can do the squiggle. Honestly, I think that would be the best, the squiggle. But it's not safe. Where if you have something like this, it is safe because the entire thing is open source. So you know the FPGA in it, etc. It's also, you're not supposed to use this as a browser. You're supposed to use this as like an identification token.
Like a confirmation.
Yes, that it is you, and you can input your password in there. And because you know it's open source and maybe you've built it yourself, even, you have the entire flow. It's not YubiKey. So YubiKey, I trust it because I believe the audits that have been done on them are good. But if somebody, for example, the audit has been done by the NSA and the NSA puts a backdoor in it, voila, it's I'm fucked. It's not a crazy scenario. One can at least imagine it. This one, it's not possible. If it doesn't work and there is a backdoor in it, it's because I'm too dumb to know it, which is an even likelier scenario, to be fair, because it's honestly a rather complex stack. So it's challenging. but at least it's not done through trust, blind trust. It's done through understanding. Might still be trust from others that seems more knowledgeable to me on the topic, but it's different. So I think this kind of tools, instead of YubiKey or other physical hardware for authentication. Anyway, my whole point being authentication, identification, all these kind of things. I'm excited by the prospect of owning the entire flow, not relying on any party, because I think in terms of sovereignty, if we do just little wiggles in our headsets, we're playing Fruit Ninja or dancing around, we don't care. But if we're serious about a shell where we work in, I wanna know that it's a safe environment for me, us, and that it can be done with again, not the first step, obviously, but as a long-term prospect to know that once everything else is there, it's not a toy. It can be done properly. I think it's pretty exciting, basically.
And the fun thing is like it's boring until something new arrives, something self-hostable, something like a keycloak, which sort of incorporates all this knowledge which is otherwise scary and you don't want to try it yourself.
Yeah.
And then it's packaged for you to run it yourself. That can make a lot of boring stuff exciting again.
I think so.
I also want to quickly use this time to show you one more thing, which I found it a pretty disruptive innovation, but it didn't really get the headlines. Let me share it. It's basically if you want to scale something or if you want to synchronize something, then many times people will immediately start talking about Kubernetes. And this is probably deserves a lot of love, but honestly, I think if you have, I don't know how much mental, how much your mental load can handle, but it's quite complex. And I will quickly now check my GitHub stars. There is now, I don't know if you know SQLite. It's a very simple, tiny database.
Yeah.
And there is now, what was the name? Yeah, there's now Marmot, which is, it's a single binary. It's a Go binary. And basically what you do is, let me see, quick start. So you run an SQL server, which you don't actually run it. It's just a file, SQLite. And then I cannot really find the usage here. But then you basically have to, you have to run this marmot command line and point it to that file, the SQLite file. And then you can run the same marmot command on another server, and then it's automatically horizontal. It's replicated there as well. So you can have, let's say, somewhere on an intranet, an SQLite server or file which gets updated, and somewhere else online you could also have the same database as well, fully synchronized, and it's completely like they have like all these completely boring network recovery patterns, which are they're boring and complex and genius at the same time, but it's all in there because it's NATS, NATS, which is the same core which Matrix, the Dendrite server, uses as well. So it's like super stable, and it does all this. It solves all these cluster and things for you, and you don't have to fiddle with IP addresses or with like complicated stuff. It's just like self-discovery is in there. If you check the video, there is a video, I think, on YouTube, and if you just see that video, it's actually way easier than how I'm explaining it, but it's pretty amazing. So if you, yeah, it's somewhere on YouTube, but it's DuckDuckGo is not really finding it here. But it's amazing how sometimes a single command like marmot can replace a whole need for Kubernetes, because most of the time people would say like, oh yeah, you need a cluster and you need containers and this and that. Well, sometimes somebody creates a Go binary, marmot, and you can just add another Raspberry Pi and you're done.
Nice. I'll have. It's a little bit, I think, on the same principle. But do you know tailscale?
Tailscale?
Yeah.
Is that a? Yeah, I hear people are selling it to me, but I haven't really checked it.
So very briefly, but it is the same. Like one little binary that changes quite how your machine can work, and you don't need the complex stuff you normally think of. Like is that for VPN basically? Say, hey, I want to have a machine at work or a machine at home or a machine in a server. I don't want them to be exposed to the internet as servers, but I still want to be able to access the content. And you might want to VPN, so VPN client, etc. And tailscale basically does this for you based on WireGuard, and it basically does the discovery of the different machines by giving them some kind of names or identifier. But then it means, yeah, you have your home assistant at home. You don't want to expose it to the internet, which obviously would work, and I've done before. But then, yeah, you might encounter problems. And tailscales, through its simple little binary, solve this kind of issues. And you don't need, heavy infrastructure or whatnot.
That's very cool. And I was just curious, like, are you using it a lot? Because I have this, every time I hear this word VPN, I think about people who are streaming video and who want to see Netflix in another country, or torrent downloads, or...
It can be for this, of course, but VPN is also like, it's literally in the name, virtual private network. You don't ever need to leave your network. So one of the example I did, I think it was last year, I have a little prototype on this, where to say, for example, let's imagine we both want to work on an XRSH session. We don't want it exposed to the internet, but we're not physically in the same location. What we could do is using keycloak, and then we log in, etc. Or we could have a VPN, tailscale or not, where it looks like our headset and, for example, your desktop and my desktop are on the same network. So it looks like they're on the LAN, they are next to each other, but physically they are not, and it goes through all those networks. So VPN can also be used for this.
That's very interesting. I should check it out. And just to add to this, I don't know if you use it, but my buddy Mark Belmont, who joined me to FOSDEM, he told me about how he uses IPv6 addresses to basically stay connected. I don't know what he was. He was saying that he was using his home devices through IPv6 addresses. I'm not really sure yet what I cannot explain it, but it sounded really interesting and solve a lot of issues. I don't know if you use IPv6, but
I do actually, because I think in Belgium it's quite well deployed. But I think initially it's funny because one of the arguments for IPv6 was this. Where did I put it? Basically IoT, because I did a demonstration yesterday at home. But well, let's say this: the one of the way IPv6 has been sold is to say, hey, all those little devices that you have around your home, they should be reachable and addressable, but we don't have enough IPv4 addresses. So what can we do? New version v6, and it's a little bit longer, but basically unlimited amount of addresses, basically. So that if you want any, you have literally thousands of such a device at home, no problem. It's addressable. The problem is, I've never done it because to me, I don't want you or worse, the random stranger to change the temperature in my office. So that's why, even though it is possible and it is indeed fun to play with, at least in the use case of IoT, which was what was often sold for a decade ago or more, to me doesn't make sense. Having, let's say, a VPN makes a lot more sense. I don't want to expose my device to the wild internet, let's say. So having the IP address is nice. In practice, lots of cases, I don't want this. Just
Yeah,
for security purposes.
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah, I think like these IP camps, many times they just have a URL and you can watch it. But and I also remember now. Mark was telling about SSH. I think that he used to have DIN DNS to sort of have a dynamic IP because it's his home IP changed, and this was this completely like if he SSHs to his IPv6 address, it always works. So it never changes basically.
Yeah.
But I think for other things like SSH is fine, but for other things I think this tailscale sounds great. Oh man, it's getting more and more complicated as well, though. More and more layers.
Yes, we have layers of simplifications. I did learn a little bit Kubernetes for the Mozilla project, and it's like, oh, nice, can do this and that, and then another layer of abstraction. So, okay, let me just do you have a minute?
Yes.
So let me share my screen. The other thing that I did learn actually on that topic that might be interesting also, let's imagine that you want to deploy XRSH demo servers at scale. My provider for servers, usually because I don't like AWS and I like even less Google Cloud and Microsoft. Well, I hate all those. Anyway, I have OVH based in Europe. But what I tinkered with this weekend is their Node.js API. And basically, so I log in with it and then I decide the credential. I usually make them very short, like 1 hour, because I don't want to have some keys where I can delete my services. And for example, what I can do, if I go there, so I made a little script. Right one is this one, where I log in. I can even show this because theoretically they are not valid anymore. And through this, what I can do is this I did not manage yet, but I can list my different projects, and then I can list my Kubernetes projects. And I can start a new cluster, add nodes, basically all this, like starting a machine through Node.js code. Or I can change the DNS, like the value of the domain, the zone file, like add an A record. So for example, what you mentioned before about DIN DNS or IPv6, I can ask or I can control this value from my remote provider to rent hardware or change DNS through some Node.js code.
That's very cool. Like declarative deployment.
Yes.
And do you run this like one time or or
It depends.
Okay.
But you can basically request change to your infrastructure, getting new machines. I don't know if you're familiar with Cloud Init.
Not really.
So it's basically a boot file for your server or desktop, but whatever. Usually it's like for your desktop, for your server rather. And then you can say install that package, for example, Docker. Once Docker is installed, add my SSH key so that I can log into it. For example, when Docker is installed, install keycloak and then get that configuration file or use these configuration values. And basically you can say, I want 3 keycloak servers, and then I update my DNS zone or my domain zone so that they are added as a load balanced setup. And all this programmatically. You don't need to go through, let's say, a web page. You can do this everything. So that's why when you say should it be run once? Typically, you do the setup once, but if you need to scale or if you need to add a machine to a set of already existing machine, you can run it again. Depends really, but it's all programmatic.
Very cool. Very cool. Oh man. Oh, there's so many ways to do many things. I'm and it never stops evolving.
Nope. I put the links also in the chat.
Thanks. I'll quickly open them. All right. So this is besides being a great meeting concerning XRSH, it's also very informative. So I will put this video online as a sort of I don't know, open source madness appendix. And I think I will. I'm gonna make some coffee then and get busy again.
Yes, I'll get also some bit of energy again, and I think we'll chat maybe this afternoon for the future of text.
Future of text. All right. Then good luck and thanks, and see you soon.
My pleasure. Have a wonderful day. Talk to you
You too.
later. Bye bye.
Bye bye.